his eyes full of tears, and his voice faltering and choked up, could neither see the Lord very distinctly, nor speak to address the Lord in any way. He simply embraced the Lord within his heart and remained standing in that way with folded hands. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Just as Krishna is addressed in the Brahma Samhita as Adi Purusha, the original personality, so King Prithu, being an empowered incarnation of the Lord, is referred to in this verse as Adi Raja, the original or ideal king. He was a great devotee and at the same time a great hero who conquered over all undesirable elements in his kingdom. He was so powerful that he was equal in fighting to Indra, the king of heaven. He gave protection to his citizens, keeping them engaged in pious activities and devotion to the Lord. He did not collect a single cent of taxes from the citizens without being able to give them protection from all calamities. The greatest calamity in life is to become godless and therefore sinful. If the state head or king allows the citizens to become sinful by indulging in illicit sex life, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, then the king is responsible, and he has to suffer the resultant sequence of reactions for the sinful lives of the citizens because he levels taxes on them unnecessarily. These are the principles for a ruling power. And because Maharaj Prithu observed all the principles for a ruling chief, he is referred to here as Adi Raja. Paragraph. Even a responsible king like Maharaj Prithu can become a pure devotee of the first order. We can distinctly see from King Prithu's behavior how he became ecstatic, both externally and internally, in pure devotional service. A 2-sentence paragraph. Next paragraph. Just today we have seen in the newspapers of Bombay that the government is going to repeal its prohibition laws. Ever since Gandhi's non-cooperation movement, Bombay has been kept dry and has not allowed its citizens to drink. But unfortunately, the citizens are so clever that they have increased illicit distillation of liquor, and although not being sold publicly in shops, liquor is being sold in public lavatories and similar abnormal places. Unable to check such illicit smuggling, the government has decided to manufacture the liquor at cheaper prices so that the people can have their supply of intoxication directly from the government instead of purchasing in public lavatories. The government failed to change the hearts of the citizens from indulging in sinful life. So, instead of losing the taxes they collect to inflate the treasury, they have decided to manufacture liquor to supply to the citizens who hanker after it. Paragraph. This kind of government cannot check the resultant actions of sinful life, namely war, pestilence, famine, earthquakes, and similar other disturbances. Nature's law is that as soon as there are discrepancies in regard to the law of God, parentheses, which are described in Bhagavad Gita as dharmasya glani, or disobedience to the laws of nature or God, at once there will be heavy punishment in the form of sudden outbreaks of war. We have recently experienced a war between India and Pakistan. Within 14 days, there have been immense losses of men and money, and there have been disturbances to the entire world. These are the reactions of sinful life. The Krishna consciousness movement is meant to make people pure and perfect. If we become even partially pure, as described in the Bhagavatam, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, by development of Krishna consciousness, then lust and greed, the material diseases of the citizens, will be reduced. This can be made possible simply by broadcasting the pure message of Srimad Bhagavatam, or Krishna consciousness. Big commercial and industrial firms have contributed many thousands of rupees to a defense fund that burns the money in the form of gunpowder. But unfortunately, if they are asked to contribute liberally to advance the Krishna consciousness movement, they are reluctant. Under the circumstances, the world will periodically suffer from such upsurges and outbreaks of war, which are the consequences of not being Krishna conscious. It's not surprising that communist governments want to ban Prabhupada's books if they read them, because what they stand for is something that Prabhupada's books speak out against strongly. The picture that we're getting is a picture of not a resident of Vrindavan or those kinds of things we're used to hearing about where there's symptoms of ecstasy. But this is Prithu, who is similarly exhibiting symptoms of ecstasy. He can't speak. He is stunned. And the Lord, after hearing Prithu's prayers, he didn't say anything else. He just didn't leave. And so what that meant to Prithu is, he has affection for me. And recognizing that affection for him, he's stunned. And can't move, folded palms, trembling in ecstasy, seeing face to face the form of the Supreme Lord. It's not an unfamiliar pose or image. When Dhruva saw Lord Vishnu, he was like that. When Prahlad saw Lord Vishnu, of course, he received the touch of the hand of Lord Nrsingadev, so he was able to speak, but he was speechless, stunned. And yet, the flow, like a river, the flow of the waves of the river of ecstasy moved, and of course he's able to speak shortly. But there's this stretch of time where he's stunned. So Rupa Goswami has given us some analysis, surgical analysis, when sometimes it's said, of different symptoms of bhava and what stimulates them, and what the physical symptoms, what the mental symptoms, what the emotional symptoms, and they're of different categories. And of course, there's a river. How many waves are there in a river? You can't count them all. But Rupa Goswami is identifying some of the categories and subcategories, etc. So the root of that understanding includes the teachings or the messages of Srimad Bhagavatam, because in fact these narrations are meant to stimulate that kind of love. For devotees that are elevated in a purified state of consciousness, just hearing these descriptions, they stimulate their ecstatic love. That's how the Bhagavatam works. But through sound, it cleanses, and for those who are cleansed, it stimulates ecstatic love. It's that kind of literature. We'll say it negatively. Material literature doesn't do that. What does material literature do? It stimulates the modes of nature. Someone may hear, so goodness, passion, ignorance, and descriptions of material events that are not God-centered, and it'll stir this mode, that mode, the other mode. And for example, popular literature and popular movies are stimulating passion and ignorance. They have a nice name. They call it action movies. And it stimulates violence. So why is there lots of violence? One of the reasons is there's lots of sound vibration that's of that nature. And people like it. And the consequence isn't nice. Nonetheless, people like it. And as people like it, they do those things that are of that nature. So it's like a whirlpool that goes down and 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 down. And that's the nature of Kali Yuga. It goes down and down and down. It goes down to the very bottom. But there's an antidote, and that's hearing transcendental sound vibration. So in the midst of Kali Yuga, as Prabhupada is writing in the purport, the antidote or the medicine, Bhavo Shadat Shrotamano Biramat, is a medicine that's taken through the ear. And that medicine that's taken through the ear, Swanam Bhava Saroruham, it denotes Ishamalam Krishna, like rain in the autumn season. We're discussing this in the light of the Bhagavad. The rainy season, torrential rain, wind, characteristic, not every day, but that's what happens. And reservoirs of water become churned by the wind and the rain and torrential rain, and the bottom of the reservoir of water, lake or pond or something, becomes muddy. And when the rainy season stops, there's the opportunity for the mud to settle, but it's a phenomena that's poetically described. Very light rain that comes in the autumn season very quickly settles the mud to the bottom. And then one can see within. There's a statement in yoga literatures about controlling the mind. And the way that they depict the controlling of the mind in yoga literatures is at the bottom of a lake, there's a treasure. And you can't see the treasure if the lake is turbulent, because mud is stirred and you can't see it at the bottom. But there's a treasure. And so, therefore, in yoga practice, like a lake, the mind, when turbulent and not controlled, the treasure that's within the mind, that is, the understanding of the presence of the Supreme Lord within, is blocked. So what's their process is by meditation, which is neutralizing, but not permanently. It's impermanent, because by nature the mind is chanchala. So when meditation is completed and one moves on to other activities besides meditation, then the mind again becomes turbulent. It may be slower than for a materialist, than compared to a yogi meditator. But it's a direction to go in that's good. That's why it's part of Vedic practice. Dhyana, meditation, is part of yoga practice. It's recommended. It's prescribed. But it's not complete, or it's insufficient, or it's temporary. The benefit is temporary until what? The Bhagavatam's message is when that sound vibration is in relation to the Supreme. When the sound vibration is in relation to the Supreme, it has a different effect. The different effect is that the natural heart, consciousness, and mind alignment connects to the Supreme Person. So this is it's a bhakti message. And the bhakti process connects one to the original source of everything through a relationship of loving service. And so hearing becomes part of an introduction to the bhakti process, the cleansing and the awakening. And as the cleansing becomes more complete, the awakening becomes more complete. And as the awakening becomes more complete, then some attraction, and then more mature a taste, and then more mature an attachment, and then more mature is ecstatic connection. And the final mature stage is prema. So the method of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is beginning, the middle, and the end. It's at every stage. It helps begin, it helps mature, and it brings the matured stage. The potency, the potential is there to bring the matured stage. So as Prithu is experiencing what he's experiencing, the potential in hearing what Prithu is experiencing is found within the sound vibration itself. Why? Because the personality of Godhead is at the center. Again, we'll do some contrasting. Supposing there's some literature about somebody, a fiction person, somebody has something amazing happen, and they may, for a period of time, become stunned. But it's temporal. It's fleeting. It's not substantial. It's a reflection of that which is of the soul. So what's wanted is to make that connection that's of the soul in relation to the Supreme Soul, inspiring one to become a loving servant of the Supreme. Now these aren't new ideas, but it's just describing the effect, the science of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, the process of bhakti starting with hearing. Right away in the purport, Prabhupada is identifying or focusing on a term that's in the verse itself, Adi Rajaha. The Adi Rajaha is the personality of Godhead. He's the King of Kings. Even in a Western terminology, in glorifying God, he's the King of Kings. So the king, by position, is powerful, and the king controls the citizens. The king may control the citizens simply because he has a sword and, power. He can overpower those that may oppose him, and so he rules. But a divine king, a benevolent king, it rules the subjects by their love. That's a more powerful method of control. A nice example, wonderful example of this, a transcendental example of this, is Lord Ram. He ruled by love. He was powerful, and he could protect the citizens, etc., etc., etc. But the factor of love was so strong that it was effortless. When needed, effort was made. And otherwise, just like the killing of Lavanasura, the Brahmanas came from Madhupuri to ask Ram for protection from Lavana, a terrible demon in Madhupuri. And hearing, it was decided Shatrughna would go. Not Shatrughna. Who went? Huh? Shatrughna. Shatrughna went. Yes, Shatrughna went. Shatrughna went. And finished him. Anyway, so when necessary, protection was extended for those that were incorrigibles. But otherwise, the citizens were ruled by love. The law was there, but the obedience to law was because of love. And the law is there for purpose. The law is there, the Dharma is there for the purpose of making smooth or natural or according to the Lord's plan, people living in this world who have another spirit besides cooperating with the Lord, that is a desire to enjoy independently of the Lord. That's why people come. And Dharma is to regulate and make it smooth instead of opposite. Very rough and very unpleasant. So Dharma is there to elevate criminals, meaning rebellious to the king and rebellious to the laws of God because of wanting to enjoy independently. So it's regulating that and wanting to enjoy independently by higher principles. And when there is a religious king or an Adi Rajaha like Prithu, he is fixed on the personality Godhead, and he has all good qualities and good character, and people are ready to follow. At the same time, he was ready to chastise the earth because the earth wasn't producing for the benefit of the citizens. She gave her explanation why. And when that course correction was made, the citizens had a bountiful supply. And so in this way, King Prithu had many pastimes, with celebrated pastimes, where he exhibited the duties of a king, and he's called Adi Rajaha because he's an incarnation. He's a jiva empowered by the Supreme Lord to rule as a Shaktivesh avatar. So as an avatar, he's as good as the original. And Krishna is the original. But as far as this principle, specifically, the principle of ruling, or the position of a king, he is the manifestation, the Shaktivesh avatar of Krishna's ruling power. Palana Shakti, it's called. And so he ruled very expertly, very effectively, And all of it in terms of the pastime of Prithu for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Now he's Vishnu's Shaktivesh avatar. But as the Shaktivesh avatar for ruling, he's exhibiting this unparalleled devotion to Vishnu, who's standing before him. And so the inside is ecstasy, and the outside is ruling potency, carrying out the duties. So much is said in Prabhupada's writings about unqualified leaders. And he doesn't hesitate, just like in this purport. He doesn't hesitate to call a spade, or identify the mindset and thus disqualification of unqualified leaders and how people suffer. Here there's 2 paragraphs speaking about modern circumstances where government is not really interested, nor are they powerful enough to curb the lower tendencies because they're not qualified. So what to do? Well, how does the unqualified become qualified? You know, when government, or when leaders in government are not elevating the character of the citizens, it's problematic. I mean, just a little sharing, but one of the big, how-to questions at the end of classes is how to navigate my way through being in the workplace with people that are, heavily materialistic, or young people in school dealing with other students who are heavily materialistic, how to navigate, how to maintain Krishna consciousness in a toxic atmosphere. The principle is simple. The application of the principle is where the challenge comes. But the resources, one of the main resources for Shravanam Kirtanam is this Srimad Bhagavatam. So everyone should be engaged in regular Shravanam Kirtanam of the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And those that are brahmanas, or of Brahminical nature, disposition, should carefully study and carefully model and carefully speak the messages of Srimad Bhagavatam in various ways. And when the brahmanas are performing that duty, then it makes it possible for the Kshatriyas and people in general to be relieved of the unwholesome, toxic atmosphere. Like this particular example of ending prohibition. This is 4th canto. So whatever the year was when this was done, the prohibition repealed. I mean, it's not a new thing. There's all kinds of, in our contemporary history, all kinds of really cuckoo things that governments are doing for whatever the reasons the governments do those things. Restricting sinful life. It's the gates open by legislative assembly, and then it becomes the way of life without a qualified king. So the qualified kings need the guidance of qualified brahmanas. So the approach that Prabhupada had was, first of all, make persons qualified with Brahminical quality to influence the people in general, because it's democracy, then people in general can influence the government, because that's what democracy is about. Anyway, that's a principle. You got to do something. To do nothing is not an option. What's that something? Just like coming up very shortly is Gita Jayanti. So, besides having a nice festival, Gita Jayanti, what's the deeper purpose of honoring Bhagavad Gita? Same as what's here. Is honoring Srimad Bhagavatam. It's for purification and upliftment of consciousness, ourselves, and then in turn through our protection and our interactions in a toxic atmosphere, and propagate Bhagavad Gita's message, distribute the book, gift the book, hear the book, remember its message, apply its message, upliftment of the consciousness from toxic influence to elevated consciousness, just by sound. That's our solution, or the medicine to the toxicity of the age of Kali. That may make some people uncomfortable, and Prabhupada is prepared to make people uncomfortable if or when the purpose was dislodging such persons from bad habits and compromise with those bad habits to a position of higher consciousness, and how to achieve that. So he spoke strongly, as you know, in certain circumstances, as needed, but for that purpose of elevation of consciousness. Powerful Acharya. Let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, that when you were explaining about mind control and autumn rain comparison, I did not understand completely how that is compared. If you could explain.
And let me say back what I think you're asking. I made some comparison about a mind and seeing one of the statements was, in yoga literature, there's this understanding that, like at the bottom of a lake, there's a treasure, but you can't see the treasure when the lake is muddy. Similarly, there's the treasure of the presence of the Lord within that one cannot see when one's mind is in turbulence. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but you mentioned something about autumn rain also. I did not understand autumn rain.
There's a verse in Canto 6, in the first chapter, where there's a sequence. The background is Canto 2. What? Yes. Canto 2. Okay. The comparison is how the mind can become purified. And the mind can become purified by the hearing process. And there's a comparison of how the mind can become purified by the hearing process to reservoirs of water during the rainy season become muddy. After the rainy season comes the autumn season, and there's something about light autumn rain falling on the surface of a reservoir of water that's muddy. It has the effect of helping to settle the mud. And when the mud settles, one can see deep within that reservoir of water. but one cannot see when the reservoir of water has the bottom mud stirred up. So the hearing process is compared to the light autumn rain.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So I think when we are interacting with new devotees, we generally see that we try to give the not the spiritual explain the importance of spiritual knowledge, but these devotees, they have been cheated earlier.
They have what?
Got cheated earlier, either
Okay.
with either
Whatever.
whatever may be the cause, they are not ready to accept it.
They're cautious.
They are cautious of
That's okay.
it. So
That's good. Or it's natural, I should say. Once you're burned, you come near fire, it's like you're cautious. So
the intention was to give them, but they are not.
speak into the microphone.
Yeah. So the intention is to give them the importance of it, but the importance of the mantra and
You're repeating,
yes,
but there's resistance.
right.
So now, what's your question?
How can we encourage them to?
Just be a good example. By purity is the force. And so just be a good example in your prachar and your achar. And not try to fix other people in the doership mentality, but be in the consciousness of being Krishna's instrument in this situation, or in the world. Just be Krishna's instrument. That means there's Krishna Shakti behind your intention. And then depending upon variables, their willingness, how badly they were damaged, how pure you are, how much potency, how much empowerment Krishna gives, and and other factors, then something's going to move. Or not. Purity is the force, in short.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. There are two questions, basic, but I have understanding. So, how to understand devotional service, or what is devotional service?
Let's go to some definitions. There are two standard definitions. One is from Narada. And the first part of that definition is negation. So bhakti, what is bhakti? It's leaving to the side upadhis. You know the meaning? Upadhi. Yes? Okay. Sarva upadhi Vanir muktam, leaving aside upadhis, which means basically the bodily conception of life and its corollaries. Then rishikena rishikesha sevanam, using our senses, using that which is material in service of that which is not material. This rishikesh. Using our practical activity with the intention of pleasing the Supreme. without the bodily conception of life and its corollaries. That's a very simple definition of what bhakti is. Rupa Goswami gives another basic definition. Again, it starts with negative and then goes to positive. The negative is devotional service is without the motivation of two things. Being interested in gaining something material, or being interested in liberation, beyond. So then the positive is similar to Narada's explanation, engaging in all varieties of activities with one purpose. And the one purpose is Krishna should be pleased. That's what bhakti is. So devotees here just speak with them, and they can show you where in the scriptures those two verses are found. You can read them, become familiar with the definition of what bhakti is. It's important to be clear. And say it again and again and again and again and again and again. So it's really clear.
Sure. Thank you, Maharaj. So second question is, means all the this great personalities, so whatever we are reading in the Bhagavatam, means why it is considered to be means avatar of Lord Vishnu or Krishna?
Well, the consideration of avatar must be and is rooted in Scripture. We'll say it negatively. The conception that something or someone is an avatar is not accepted in learned circles without scriptural reference. Say it positive. Who, and what circumstances, etc., is an avatar to be considered an avatar is Scripture, is the foundation. It's the pramana that tells us who and what a avatar is. Shabda pramana. So avatars are identified in Scripture. Without Scripture, we don't know. With Scripture, we can know. Because the subject is beyond our senses. The subject of an avatar is otherworldly, and our senses don't reach there. And our mind doesn't reach there. Even our intelligence doesn't reach there. So how do we know? From that which is beyond human limitations, the Sanskrit word is apaurushaya, shabda. Purusha means man or person. And apaurushaya means beyond our human limitations. Apaurushaya shabda. Sound that comes from transcendence. That's how we know. Or that's the medium for knowing. And then the knowing is by hearing, and by hearing and hearing and hearing, then acceptance. Purification by hearing, and then recognition of the transcendental fact, for example, that Prithu is an avatar. How do we know? It's in Scripture. Not just the Srimad Bhagavatam, but other scriptures also identify who, what by name, and what their activities are, what their qualities are, and so forth. Through Scripture. Shabda Praman. Praman means evidence, or means of knowing something. That's how we know.
Sure. Thank you.
Online anything? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.